Weirding Way Media.
Welcome to episode 91 of the Filmumentaries podcast. This is Jamie Benning, talking to you here from my house in London, England. If this is the first time you've listened to the podcast, welcome. The remit is about preserving film history, and you can treat this and the 90 episodes that came before it as an archive that can be used to listen to for your entertainment or as research material. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy it. If you're a regular listener, thanks as always for joining me. And always grateful for your support. Thanks to the lovely people that already support the podcast via Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jamie Benning. I really do need your help to keep this podcast going. To make this financially viable, I need at least another 35 or so patrons. So if you enjoy the podcast and would like to buy me a pint or a coffee if we were to meet, then instead consider supporting the podcast for just $12 for a whole year. In fact, and I only realised this the other day, you can get 10% off the price when you support the podcast for an entire year. So $12 or your currency equivalent will contribute to 12 months. That's 24 episodes. Let it be your Christmas gift to me. There are several tiers to choose from on Patreon with several different perks, including videos of the podcast and merchandise. In fact, you'll have received, if you are a $3 and above patron, a video version of the last episode when I spoke to the guys who created the RoboDoc series. So you can check that out now. That'll be coming out to the rest of you in a week or so. But if you're a patron, you'll get this stuff early. So you can find out all the details at patreon.com/Jamie Benning. You can also support the podcast by buying some clothing adorned with the logo and some other designs that me and my friend artist Pete Starling have put together. Have a look. It's on filmumentaries.teemill.com. That's Teemill. I'll put all these links in the show notes, of course. If you can't support the podcast in that way, via either Patreon or on the store, then please just share, like, subscribe, and review the podcast. It's a very small podcast. It's just me. It's very independent. It really is just me and my laptop, and I need all the help I can get to spread the word. You can also support the podcast by heading to Amazon in your region or to JediTimeline.com and buying our Return of the Jedi, the Unauthorized Timeline book, which catalogues the entire history of the film from all aspects of production to toy lines, the video games, the books, comics. It's a history that you've not quite read in this way. So if you're a Star Wars fan, if you love Return of the Jedi, then do check it out. At the moment, it's on Amazon for about £20 or your currency equivalent. So go to Amazon and look for Jedi Timeline. There's a hardback edition, which we can't reduce the price on at the moment because we'll make no money. And there's a softcover version or paperback. Do have a look. Just £20. It could be a gift for yourself or your loved one. And the money that I make on my side will go straight back into the Filmumentaries pot to keep this going. There's also my Vimeo channel and my YouTube channel. Just look for Filmumentaries. In fact, if you look, you'll find my link tree and all of the links are there. Okay, so let's get to this episode. This is the second episode of November 2023, and I spoke to director, producer and editor Jeremy Coon. Now, Jeremy was the producer, most famously, on the 2007 hit film Napoleon Dynamite, but I spoke to him in his editor-director capacity about his new documentary, A Disturbance in the Force, which I was lucky enough to see at the UK premiere at the Prince Charles Cinema in London just about a couple of weeks ago now. The documentary chronicles the story behind the bizarre and legendary Star Wars Holiday Special, the 1978 TV special full of growling wookies, odd dance numbers, and a revisit to the cantina, a revisit of sorts, run by Bea Arthur, unusual and awkward appearances from the main cast of Star Wars, And this is a shorter than usual episode, but I wanted to get this out to you before the documentary is released on the 5th of December. It's going to be available in some cinemas. It's going to be available on download and on physical media as well on the 5th. And also, I'm flying to Abu Dhabi on Sunday, and I'm for a week's work, and I'm not going to have time to finish this podcast. No, it's not F1, though I'm working on that today and tomorrow and Sunday, albeit in the UK, and then I fly off to Abu Dhabi for 5 days for another job. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get back to the task at hand here. Here's my conversation with Jeremy Coon, director, editor of Disturbance and the Force, and I'll be back at the end for a bit more jabbering on. So I saw the film, A Disturbance in the Force, at the Prince Charles Cinema last week with an audience there of eager fans. I have to say there were so many laughs in the theatre. It's actually funnier than a lot of comedies I've seen lately. I was really laughing away. I think there's this 6 laugh test that one of the reviewers talks about in the UK here. I laughed at least 25 times, I think, like out loud. So congratulations on the film, first of all. When did you first get involved in the project? How did it come about?
So by the way, thanks for checking out the film. I'm glad you liked it. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So the first time I came across the film, I'd known about the holiday special since about 2002, but my co-director, Steve Kozak, had called me about something unrelated. And I make documentaries, so I'm always searching for like topics, and usually it starts with like, oh, that's interesting, I have questions, and that kind of leads to developing a documentary. And he knew his dad was Bob Hope's producer, so Steve grew up and knew all these people that worked on the variety shows, and he's like, yeah, I'd like to try to do something with the holiday special, but didn't quite know how to go about it. Yeah, and I just kept bugging him, like, well, let's go back, forget what you called me about, I want to talk about this holiday special thing. And that's just kind of started. Literally, I came out like a month later. We shot some interviews with like Lenny Rips and I think Lenny, one of the cameramen, and that's started. And then Steve Bender. So we started with like 4 interviews just to kind of see what was there. And we're also concerned a lot of these people are older, and there's a risk they've either. Well, yeah, they could pass away. They could not, like, memories fade. We have people we've talked to just, like, if you were 40 when you made this, it was not, Star Wars was not a big deal to you. But if you were 20, it was a big deal. So people who were like around 20 or early 20s have very vivid memories. To the people who were older, this was just another show.
That's the thing that really surprised me, actually, that I didn't really know what to expect of the documentary. I mean, I'd seen a couple of clips in the trailer, but what I didn't realize is you get people that worked on the show. You've got camera operators there, you've got one of the directors there and producers, and you've got some of this archival interview stuff as well throughout with people that were involved. So there are moments where we see Mark Hamill talking about it and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher talking about it, but we almost don't need those people because it exists as this artifact. We know what Star Wars is already, we know what it became, but this documentary talks about that kind of no man's land just after the film had been released, and how do we keep the interest going? And what was fantastic was to see you include obviously a key member of the Star Wars team back then, Charles Lippincott, who was the marketing guy. How difficult was it to track down information about that period where there's so little information known?
There's actually I think there's actually a lot of info. You just have to look for it. It's just not readily available. So I mean, it was just any source we could find. I mean, the Star Wars archive book has a section on the holiday special that we were able to pull some stuff from. Like, there's quotes from Lucas that we use. Like Charlie Lippincott, we would have loved to interview him. He passed away before we got a chance, but like, he posted tons of stuff on Facebook. Like the genesis, we feels like this meeting that was at Warner Brothers that made Lucas mad was kind of the impetus to like them marketing Star Wars after September. Like, that's strictly from a note that he posted. And it took some while to kind of fill in the holes, but like, it's just journalism. You're just trying to figure out and fill in holes and get answers. And sometimes you get down the wrong path and you realize that, what you thought was right wasn't, or people have just assumed that it's the truth and it's not.
I think that I definitely came out with a a better appreciation of the holiday special, not in terms of the artistry of it, but its place in time and its place in context. And I think you do a fantastic job, you know, your co-director, your editor on this as well, where you've managed to put the holiday special in context and in its place, and to give the audience a better understanding that it wasn't, I mean, it is a kind of anomalous in a way, but in a way it isn't, because you know, as a UK resident all my life, I wasn't really aware of these huge holiday specials that would happen. And you do that. You show a lot of those originals, you know, like you said, Bob Hope as well. And
Yeah,
it really
like
sort of... Go on.
yeah, it would have been weird for them not to do a holiday special in '78.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah, and that, to be that, it was good. You said you knew about it from what, the 2000s. I first found a VHS copy of this in 1991 or 2. I was trying to remember when it was. I was at a toy fair. I just started realizing that Star Wars toys were worth a bit of money, and I'd sold and bought some. And there was this one vendor there, and he said, "Oh, have you ever seen this?" And he handed me this black and white covered VHS tape. And I said, well, what is this? Like, how do I not know about this? And bear in mind, this is somebody who'd read the Han Solo novels and the Lando novels, you know, from back in the day. And he said, oh, it's the story between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. And my mind was blown. I remember running home and calling my friend Mark Horton, and he came round and we watched it. And our mind was blown in a different way, because it totally wasn't what we're expecting. But in terms of a special, in terms of a holiday special, a Christmas special, it's kind of exactly what you might expect, isn't it?
yeah, did you make it all the way through the first time you watched it?
No, we didn't. I don't think we did. I think that first kind of 20 minutes with the Wookiees was kind of enough. I think we got to the cartoon a bit later on. I think we fast forwarded through some of the music performances and some of the general weirdness. It's a strange watch.
Yeah, I made it 20 minutes and I wasn't convinced that it was real. I was like, this has got to be a prank, or like someone did something.
Well, it feels like it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I forgot what your question was.
Well, it's just, you know, that we forget that really, like you said, it would be odd if they hadn't have done it, because these things were fairly commonplace for big cultural figures, and maybe not films, but big cultural figures that have a holiday special. So it seems like you've put it in context for me finally, and it finally makes sense to me. Whereas, you know, since 1991, it has made no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is like we kind of pretend that like Star Wars. I feel like Star Wars has two tracks. You have the films and the TV shows that are kind of like, you know, people think are sacred, but then you have the marketing side of this where it's pretty much anything goes. They'll slap Star Wars in anything, and like there's two things that managed to coexist very well. But like, I mean, I just remember. I mean, I think even like 4 or 5 years ago, I was at the grocery store and like Darth Vader was on a sack of potatoes. I'm just like, this is, it's just,
yeah.
So it's just, so I mean, in the world, the holiday special, this leads towards more marketing, but it's not like, it's more structured now, but it's not like it's completely gone away. Like at the end of the day, this is like a money machine that's marketing and it just kind of takes over.
Yeah, I think we're so used to Star Wars being this kind of very delicately curated and managed franchise, whereas back then it was, look, we've just got to get eyes on this thing and we've got to get it out there in every form. You know, for goodness sake, they produced a C-3PO sellotape dispenser with the sellotape being dispensed from between his legs. I mean, things slipped through the net. But what I didn't realize as well was that I always assumed that George had just given up the reins to this and just let them go kind of batshit crazy in whatever direction they wanted. But he was involved at the start, of course. It was something that he wanted to do. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, 20th Century Fox is like, hey, when's the next sequel? And he's like, 3 years. Like, 3 years? We can't wait 3 years. People are going to forget all about this. And like, we got to do something. And they're like, well, let's do a holiday special. And he's like, fine. So he like wrote the initial treatment, which is, we get into a little bit in the movie, but like this 5-page treatment in the Star Wars archive book is attributed to Lenny Rips and Pat Proff writing it. And they're like adamant that they had nothing to do with it. So the Star Wars archive book, or at least there's some discussion of who, it sounds like Lucas, but we believe that Lucas wrote that and then handed it off to the writers. And I mean, he was involved in meetings, and then early on he left, but he was still reviewing footage, and I mean, he was involved from a distance, and like Lucasfilm had a liaison there, and was Mickey Herman to, you know, communicate back to him. I mean, through the process of making this movie, what surprised me, when I first started, I was just kind of like, oh, Lucas is such a jerk. Like, why can you just embrace this and have a laugh about it? And I have a lot more empathy for him after going through this, because I understand his position. He's like 33. He's made the most successful movie of all time. He's just trying, and like everything's being thrown at him. And like this is so far down the list of things that is a priority for him that he was doing this more as a favor to 20th Century Fox. Because he was focused on Empire. He had like American Graffiti 2, plenty of other projects. And like he was bankrolling all of that himself.
Yeah.
So like he was taking a massive amount of risk. And this was just an easy way to kind of push the toys for Christmas. So knowing the context of all that, it makes complete sense why you would do it.
Absolutely. And it feels like this is the definitive word on the holiday special. We don't need to discuss it anymore. We just need to watch this documentary again. Because the blood is not on George's hands here. There's no blame. And I wondered if, before I was seeing it, as I was waiting there in the theatre, I was thinking, is this going to go down the route of being a critical piece? Is it just going to be, going hell for leather for George's, jugular? But there's real affection here. It's actually quite emotional, some of the scenes, people talking about something that happened a long time ago. There is that kind of, I always get emotional when you get that sense of a passage of time and there's, fairly elderly people talking about this crazy thing they did way back when. I think you've managed to find a really good balance that is not only funny, but is also emotional. And as I said, the kind of definitive word on it. I'd rather watch this again than watch the holiday special. This is kind of like what I wish the holiday special was. It's a comedy and it's got some great moments in it too.
It never gets easier to watch. I've watched it maybe 6 times beginning to end through the course of making this to like pull clips out of it and stuff. And like every time it's about the 20-minute mark where I'm just like, all right, I can make this. This is, but yeah, I mean, it's anything that's stood the test of time. It's been 45 years and people are still talking about it. I mean, Lenny Rips talks about it. He gets better service because he's written tons of TV show stuff and he gets more attention when people find out that he did the holiday special, just because he's associated with something Star Wars. But like few things last 45 years. A lot of stuff just gets forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, all the other holiday specials and things that you have clips of in the start of the film to sort of put it in context. I had no idea any of those existed. So it's a whole part of American culture that I'm 47 this year, but we didn't have that kind of stuff here. I guess the one I was aware of course, was the Bing Crosby, David Bowie one, but that's kind of
that's good.
Yeah,
that's like, I mean, that's the one thing. Like every Christmas, that's my favorite Christmas song. It's great.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I mean, the way I kind of view the holiday special is that it's like going back to your junior high or high school yearbook. And like, once you remove 30, 40 years, like no one was cool back then. Everyone looks like a dork. Like it's just, looking back on stuff now, it's always going to look bad. So like stuff that's going on now, people 40 years from now will look back and be like, oh, how could you guys ever do that? That's ridiculous. You look terrible. Like, it's just, most stuff does not age well.
No, it's funny seeing those clips. Like there's those clips of the Donnie and Marie Osmond show, and Donnie's interviewed quite heavily in the documentary, where you see his brothers dressed in the stormtrooper outfits, which of course now are worth, millions of dollars. I think one sold recently for like $500,000. It's probably one of those, because they would send those costumes and they would often send the actors. I mean, you can see it's Peter Mayhew in a lot of those appearances on those TV shows. But it's kind of crazy it sort of reminds me how good a film Star Wars is in terms of a design and the sort of historical context in which it fits, because it really did come out of nowhere. And I know people talk about that, a lot, but it's sort of become cliche now. But this has kind of repositioned it again for me in those terms, that this was a hell of a movie to put out there in a time when films and TV were completely disconnected, really, weren't they? I mean, TV was of such a lower quality. And it's just strange to see that transition from the movie and then imagining a year later seeing this absolutely unbelievably crazy holiday special. But I get it now. I finally get it.
Well, and the bar was so much lower for TV just because, I mean, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but like back then you had 3 channels and they're just trying to fill time with just, whatever they could get people to watch to sell advertising.
Yeah. Well, how did you go about deciding on which contributors to have? Because you've got some great comedy voices in there. You've got Gilbert Gottfried, you've got Weird Al Yankovic, we've got who's in there, Seth Green. Good to see Jonathan Rintzler in there, who I interviewed for this podcast not long before he passed away. Great to see him, smiling
was
away
great.
and talking so kind of passionately about it. Scott Kirkwood in there, I've known for a long number of years, and Carl Newman, of course, was who was a producer on it, and Patton Oswalt and Gus Lopez is in there, and Steve Sansweet. These are all names that Star Wars fans know, but I'm sure everybody wants to talk about this. But what I've already asked the question.
Not everybody.
Well, I was going to say a lot of people are interested in it, but these guys, and you've got Bonnie Burton in there as well. These guys and girls speak in a knowledgeable way about the film. They really do know what they're talking about. They understand, the comedy behind it. They understand the story behind it. They understand the context of it. So I think you chose your contributors really well.
Yeah, it was more kind of like, who do I like to talk to? Who would I like to watch the special with and talk about
Sure.
it? Was kind of where it started. I mean, the people like Seth Green, he's friends with Kyle Newman. That's how we got in touch with him. But like, he was like number one on my list because aside from being a celebrity, he's like worked on Star Wars stuff, part of the Star Wars world, and like has talked to Lucas about the Star Wars holiday special. So next to interviewing Lucas, like Seth is about as good as it's going to get an interview. So like he was super insightful and just like an open book, and like, hey, we want to talk about it. And like a lot of these people weren't cagey at all. So I mean, it was more just seeing like Gilbert Gottfried had done a podcast about the holiday special that we thought was really funny. So that's why I reached out to him. So a lot of it was just kind of attributed to that, just people who were somehow connected to the special or Star Wars and wanted to get their take on it because we thought it would be funny and insightful.
Yeah, and then the people who were involved in the show that didn't want to talk about it, as you said a moment ago, some people don't want to talk about it. That makes it even more amusing in a way because, for some people I've had this when I've interviewed people. Sometimes they don't want to talk about a project they did in their past. And maybe they've got used to not talking about it because they didn't want it to affect their career. But even in retirement, some people don't want to talk about these projects that they did because of how they're perceived.
Yeah, I think most people are kind of like, it's been 45 years. Like, they're just happy that someone wants to talk to them about something. I mean, the people who don't want to talk about it, I feel don't want to talk about it because they feel that George Lucas doesn't want them talking about it. And I actually kind of suspect George Lucas at this point doesn't really care that much, but they think that he does, so they don't. And then it's that weird, like, trying to be offended for someone else for something that maybe you don't know.
Yeah.
Or you're not in a position to be offended for it.
Yeah. And I assumed in watching it, you went down the route of fair use for the clips here, because Lucasfilm really doesn't want to have anything to do with this. Although, like you say in the doco, they did release the cartoon portion of it on Disney Plus, and who knows?
Yeah, we talked to him early on, and like the unofficial response we got back was that it's too soon to tell the story.
Really, right? Not enough years have passed.
You read into that what you want, but the official, like, that's what we got back was like, after 45 years, it's too soon we can't tell the story just yet.
And I think I was hoping that I wasn't going to see too much of the holiday special again, because it is a difficult watch, as we've already said. And I thought you used it very sparingly and perfectly, really, to tell a great story. How many edits did you go through? How many times did you think, this is it, we're finished? And then actually, after sending it, viewing it with an audience, did you have to kind of retweak things again?
I have no idea how many edits. It was a lot. I mean, I started out as an editor, and then I kind of retired because editing is really hard. And so then I came out of retirement to edit this after 15 years because I couldn't afford to pay an editor that I thought could understand it. Mm-hmm. So I just started doing it in my own free time. So we got into South by Southwest. So we knew I knew I was going to finish a cut for South by Southwest, but I also knew that I didn't want to have that be the final copy, because like we were supposed to interview Patton Oswalt for that, but then like a huge rainstorm came in LA and we couldn't get it. It didn't finish in time, so I know we wanted to revisit it. So it was kind of nice to have this festival run where we're showing the South by Southwest cut and be able to test audiences and kind of see what, like, because of that, I cut 5 minutes out of the movie, and we've added in the final version. We added in probably about another 10. Mm-hmm. That includes like Steve Sansweet, Gus Lopez, Patton Oswalt, Bobcat Goldthwait, which was just an interview that I tacked on to another project I was doing. I was like, hey, you seem like someone who would like the holiday special. What are your thoughts? And like, he talked for like 6 minutes, and it was all gold.
And has this been a project that you've been doing kind of on the back burner for a number of years? Because I'm assuming there's not much budget involved in something like this, because nobody's going to do a pre-sale for you. Yeah.
It was. We tried to sell it, and it's. I mean, people. I feel like every project I've done, people are like, "Well, we don't know about this. This seems risky." And then when it's done, they're like, "Why didn't you come to us with this? This is a great idea. This is a great movie." And it's just it's the way it's always worked. Every film I've done has been that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's for better or worse, but it's. We started a little over 4 years ago. COVID kind of sidelined. We did like some preliminary interviews, and then COVID hit, and we kind of were sidelined for like a year. We occasionally picked up interviews here and there. I'd say the last little over a year has probably been, or 18 months has been pretty hardcore getting it done.
Mm-hmm. Is that based on the fact that you had like a distribution deal lined up and you needed to get it in under the wire at a certain date?
Well, it was South by Southwest, and I knew that, like, we got into South by Southwest in March earlier this year. I knew we wanted it. We knew we wanted it out for Christmas this year because it was the 45th anniversary, and I'm like, I don't want to wait till the 46th anniversary to release it. There's no. Yeah, so I mean, it's also a very weird time in the entertainment industry, just in general, with the strikes and like streamer money kind of drying up. But because of that, I think it's actually opened up a lot of opportunity for us as a kind of an independent film. Like, theaters are much more receptive to playing it than I think they would have been, a couple of years ago.
Sure, yeah. Well, I was going to ask you actually, what was the reaction like at South by Southwest? Because that's obviously a very big festival to be showing your film at. The kudos involved there. If it gets a good reaction, was there a good reaction?
No, it was a great reaction. It's also like the perfect venue to play a film like this, because it's like that kind of the pop culture film plays really well with that audience.
Yeah.
So the reaction was great. Like we're still 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I keep waiting.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Someone's going to be like, I'm going to write a negative review just to ruin that. So I appreciate whoever that person's going to be, because it's going to happen at some point.
It's going to happen. Yeah. I think the thing, like for me, when I'm watching a documentary, and I'm trying to make one myself at the moment, and again, it's been on the back burner because of paid work and everything else. I think.
Can you talk about what it is? Or you?
Yeah, it's about Joe Alves, who was a production designer on Jaws and Close Encounters.
Oh, cool.
And he worked for Disney and was friends with Paul Newman, and he raced cars, and he's got this incredible collection of all of his artwork and photographs and everything he worked on, which nobody has seen, and we've got access to it, and he's just a lovely guy. And I've always got in my mind that I have to make this documentary, and I have to make it for an audience that doesn't necessarily have an interest in the subject matter that it deals with. And I think what you've managed to do in this documentary is make it fun enough and see some great moments that us major Star Wars fans haven't seen before. And for me, that's quite a big deal to see clips that I'd not seen before related to Star Wars, because I've trawled the internet for my projects, and I've trawled VHS collections and all sorts. But you've managed to make it interesting to somebody who isn't necessarily invested in Star Wars as well, because I think because of the sort of passion of the contributors, and having found got the interviews with the people who worked on the show. So I think you can go into this film not knowing a damn thing about the Star Wars Holiday Special and come out having had a fantastic hour and a half. I think it's just a really good, fun film to watch.
No, thanks. Yeah, it's it's great that it crossed over. I didn't expect that initially. We're making for like, I'm not a hardcore Star Wars fan in the sense that like it's my life, but I've been a fan since I was born, effectively, because I was born in '79. I don't remember I don't remember Star Wars not existing. But yeah, like the first time I showed an early cut to was for South by Southwest to someone who is not even not Star Wars, hates Star Wars. He's like older, was like thinks like that kind of stuff's dumb. Like he emailed me and was just like, I got to tell you, like I'd love it. I didn't know he was going to watch it. He just happened to. It was passed to him by someone else, and he was just like, it was so funny. I loved it, and like that's where it kind of opened the door to me. It's like, oh, this could cross over to people, that we didn't necessarily anticipate it. But it's, we want to make it for a broader audience. So it's like, that's the plan. And like the end of the day, it's like we want people to have a good time watching it, and it's kind of like a fun throwback to see what the '70s was like.
Yeah,
whether you were there to remember it, and it's kind of fun to revisit it, or you had no clue what it was like.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, as I was coming out, I was chatting to a guy I didn't even know who just kind of said, "Oh, that was." We were both smiling as we came out. He said, "Oh, that was great," and I said, "Isn't it great to kind of see the real version of the '70s? Because everybody thinks, oh, punk and rock and roll. There was some cheesy shit going on back in the
Oh,
'70s as
it was.
well."
I would say it was mostly cheap. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean, like it's not all Godfather. I mean, it's not all highbrow stuff in the '70s. Like there's plenty of, yeah. I mean, questionable fashion choices. I was watching
yes,
something yesterday. I need to read the book. But Cisco. I mean, is Cisco and Ebert crossover to the UK at all?
yes, yeah,
Or is
yeah,
it? Yeah, it's there's a new book like Opposable Thumbs. But I was watching footage of like their first show, and I think it was like '72. It's horrible.
really,
Like they
yeah,
couldn't look they couldn't look more 70'd out. Like they look just the outfits, the hair, and yeah, it's just I don't know. It was a different time, and like I said, like time things don't age well usually.
yeah, yeah. One thing I was going to ask you, just from a sort of from my interest in documentary making, how much did Steve Kozak's experience in kind of working in the industry and your experience as well in licensing footage or getting fair use, passed through the lawyers and so on. How much did your backgrounds really help inform your choices and which direction you were going to go?
Yeah, I mean, fair use is kind of a gray area of law, so everyone has like different opinions on it. It's I mean, Steve was really helpful in the sense that like he knew a lot of the. I mean, him working in clip clearances, you get access to a lot of the stuff, and get higher res copies than are currently on the internet, and all that was really helpful. I mean, a lot of it was just scouring YouTube and trying to find stuff, and it's just like even up until we almost locked picture, I was finding things that
Yeah,
we didn't know was out there. Like that clip of Lucas talking at the 10th anniversary of Star Wars.
yeah,
I had read that quote. I could never find the context of the video, and I just happened to find it, and I was like, or at least maybe it was existing, but like I didn't see it till a couple of weeks before we locked picture. I was
yeah,
like, this has to go in. But like fair use, I mean, the way it always works is we have like a lawyer that we hire.
yeah.
Uh, I feel like I have a good sense as an editor because we went through it on like I did a film called Raiders about those kids that did a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the
Yeah,
Lost
I
Ark. So
remember it.
it's kind of like I'd gone through a similar thing with this, and like I've done enough docs, so you can kind of again, it's like a gray area, but you always want to err on the side of being safe. So we're always on the side of being safe, and then we sent it off to the lawyer to review. I think he had like 2 comments, and that was it.
Oh, really? Wow.
And then
Amazing.
his opinion is enough to get the errors and omissions insurance, and then you're covered beyond that. But it was
Yeah.
there's always that first thing where I'm like, what is this? Because like you're at the mercy of the lawyer and you don't know. Fortunately, it's worked out every time for me, but yeah, there's always that moment of like, as you come back and be like, oh, you got to cut all this stuff out because there's no way it's going to get fair use clearance.
Mm. Yeah, it's difficult to try and find that balance, isn't it? Because you don't want to have thousands of comments coming back from the lawyers, but you also want to have sort of done your due diligence before you get to that point.
Yeah,
You don't want to lose the opportunity of using something though at the same time. But it really feels like you've struck a really good balance here because, like I said, I didn't want to watch the holiday special again. I don't think anybody does, but I'll happily watch this again. In fact, I went to order it on Blu-ray, and I see that it's sold out for the moment and on Amazon. So I'm waiting for more
So
stock to come in.
the Amazon link will go live. So UK's always learn a little different. So that will
Right.
go live again on the 5th. There should
Okay.
hopefully be plenty of. It's also gonna be available from like retailers and stuff like
Sure.
that.
So
But
that's 5th of December, sort of
yeah,
worldwide release. And I see as well you've got some big screenings across the US and another one in the UK coming up, sort of starting tomorrow, really. We're recording this here on the 21st. I'm going to put this out in the next couple of days. So
yeah.
starting the 22nd. Where can people find out those details?
If you go to disturbanceintheforce.com, that's our website. So we're constantly adding. It looks like we're going to be doing a theatrical run in Canada too. Australia, we're doing some runs in New Zealand, but it's these theaters are all very nice, and they're like, what can we do to be supportive? Because I think they're Star Wars fans themselves. But it's so it's either that. You can also do holiday special doc.com. They both go to the same spot, but like whatever's most recent, like I'm updating the site every day as we add more screenings.
I was just thinking, this Blu-ray, of course, is going to sit alongside my other, documentaries and my Star Wars DVDs. But wouldn't it be amazing if this documentary was the catalyst for Lucasfilm finally releasing it in a home video format. I mean, it would be amazing. It would be both fantastic and terrible at the same time, because we'd all have to go and buy that and watch that again as well. But I think it's possible, it's possible, because I think if there's enough interest in your documentary, as we said at the start, Star Wars is business. And if there's enough people that are going to buy your documentary, there's probably just as many, if not more people, that will buy the holiday special. So
yeah, we talked about a little bit of the doc too, where I kind of feel that if they do release it, it kind of takes the coolness factor. Because I think the reason why fans kind of enjoy it is that it kind of irks them.
Yeah.
So it's like letting someone in on the joke, where it's like, oh, I guess the joke's not as funny anymore because the person we're making fun of is in.
Yeah. Well, I definitely made a few copies back when I think I just started college, 93, 94, and I was definitely making a few copies to give out to people. And it was like in your documentary, you see those moments from some of the other pop culture shows where people are using it like a real kind of, cool currency. It's like, oh my God, he's got this unknown thing that you can't get anywhere. But yeah, no, congratulations on the film. I really did enjoy it. And I implore people to go out and check it out at the cinema, and also 5th of December on home movie and download and physical media as well. Physical media where it's at for me. And will there be any extras on the physical disc?
No, I tried to put some extras, and I felt that just like everything we liked was in the movie. And I tried pulling some extras out, and I was kind of like, it just feels cheap. Like it's
putting it on there just for the sake of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so someone be like, oh, I got these extras, and you watch them, and you're like, well, I can see why this was. I mean, the one thing that's I don't think we can ever put it on a DVD extra, but like Gilbert Gottfried did like a 10-minute thing that was just filthy. It was just so filthy on like Star Wars, just everything, and like it's amusing, but it's out there.
Yeah. No, it's great to see him. It's good to see all those contributors. Yeah, thanks so much, Jeremy, and I wish you all the best for the proper release and the screenings and everything, and I appreciate your time today as well.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for the support. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jeremy Coon there. As we said, do check out the film. If you go to that website, Disturbance in the Force, you'll see the listings for the cinema screenings. And then it's going to be out on December 5th of December, in physical media and download. So do check that out. I keep saying, don't I, that the next episode is going to be Tom Spina of Regal Robot and Tom Spina Designs. But then I get some sort of time-critical episode that I need to get up, like I did with the RoboDoc guys. And again, this half of the month with the Disturbance in the Force documentary. Tom is going to be the next episode. We had a wonderful chat earlier on in the year. I've got a load more podcasts coming up, still trying to get Gareth Edwards and still getting closer. And I'd love to talk to him about the creator, of course, and his career, really. It'd just be a fantastic chat to have. He's actually a friend of a friend as well. So I've been trying to approach him with a bit of a pincer movement, and I think that's going to come together in the next few weeks, hopefully. More exciting stuff to come from the Filmumentaries banner. We are starting in earnest again on our documentary about production designer Joe Alves, who worked on Close Encounters and Jaws. He also worked for Disney, was buddies with Paul Newman, and has got this wonderful collection. We've been shooting this documentary for a couple of years now. Well, really only for 2 weeks. We spent a week in March 2022 out in the States shooting, and then a week in March 2023 shooting. But our work, this is me and my co-director and friend Paddy Tyndall, our work kind of gets in the way and life gets in the way, and we've just been very, very slowly chipping away at this. But work always gets quiet for us January, February, so we're going to be digging into the documentary and getting some stuff on the timeline and starting to craft the edit. So really looking forward to getting stuck in with that. If you want to see a trailer for it, search for Not Your Average Joe on YouTube, and there's a nice 4K video that we put together when we ran our Kickstarter early in the year. Hopefully more news coming your way about that project soon. If you'd be interested in supporting the project, if you'd be interested in an exec producer credit to help fund the documentary, if you're a kind of rich, benevolent film lover, then do get in contact with us, and you can do that via all the social media channels on DMs and things like that. So thanks for joining me for this episode, and I hope you can do so for the next episode of the Filmumentaries podcast.